My name is Clara, I'm 30 years old, and my boyfriend of 7 years just told his entire family he wouldn't propose to me because, why would I buy the cow when I get the milk for free, and her sister's is even sweeter. Before I tell you how he realized the cow owned the entire farm, the barn, and the pasture he was living on, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The laughter hit me first. It wasn't a trickle, it was a tidal wave. A roar of loud, hearty, masculine chuckles that rolled across the perfectly manicured lawn of his parents' backyard, drowning out the sizzle of burgers on the grill. It was his father's 60th birthday party, a picture-perfect suburban Saturday afternoon. The air smelled of charcoal, freshly cut grass, and the cloying sweetness of cheap beer. Everything was bright, sunny, and utterly fake. His Uncle Jerry, a man whose face was a permanent shade of crimson and whose personality was emboldened by his third Bud Light, had clapped Liam on the back with a meaty hand. "So," he'd boomed, his voice carrying across the patio, "when are you finally going to make an honest woman out of this one? You ain't gettin' any younger, boy." A hush fell over the immediate family. All eyes turned to us. I felt the familiar heat crawl up my neck, the forced smile already forming on my lips. It was a question I'd been dreading for years, at every holiday, every family gathering. And then Liam, my Liam, the man I had shared a bed and a life with for 7 years, puffed out his chest. He looked around, a performer ensuring his audience was captive, and delivered that line. The line that wasn't just a joke, but a public declaration of my worth, or lack thereof, in his eyes. "Why would I buy the cow when I get the milk for free, and her sister's is even sweeter?" His father, Michael, roared, slapping his knee so hard I thought he might dislocate it. His cousins snickered into their beer cans. His aunts tittered behind their hands. And his mother, Brenda, just offered me that same tight, pitiful little smile from across the patio, a look that said, "I'm sorry, dear, but what can you do? Boys will be boys." In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It didn't shatter or crack. It clicked. It was the cold, clean, definitive sound of a heavy vault door swinging shut and locking into place. For 7 years, I had been living in a comfortable, self-imposed fog, believing we were building a life, brick by painful brick. But with one stupid, unoriginal, breathtakingly cruel joke, Liam had burned that fog away. And what I saw in the stark, unforgiving clarity was the truth. I wasn't his partner. I was a convenience. A long-term, high-value, low-maintenance appliance. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my wine in his smug face, though the thought was a beautiful, fleeting fantasy. I just took a slow, deliberate sip of my Chardonnay, let the crisp liquid cool the fire in my throat, and smiled politely as if he'd just told the funniest story in the world. I even raised my glass in a mock toast. "Good one, Liam," I said, my voice even and light. That was last night. This morning, while he was at work, whistling as he left, I changed the locks. The plan, my secret, meticulously crafted plan, was finally in motion. This wasn't some impulsive, emotional reaction. You have to understand that. This was a contingency plan 6 months in the making. Let me take you back, because the foundation for this was laid years ago, on ground I thought was solid but was actually quicksand. For years ago, we were sitting in a sterile bank office that smelled of old paper and stale coffee. We wanted to buy a house. We had been together for 3 years, living in a cramped apartment, and it felt like the natural, adult next step. The problem, as the loan officer, a kind but brutally honest man named Mr. Henderson, laid out for us, was Liam. His finances were a train wreck. A mountain of student debt from a degree he barely used, a car loan that was underwater, and a credit score that made Mr. Henderson physically wince as he looked at the screen. My application, on the other hand, was pristine. I had a great, rising salary from my job as a project manager at a tech firm, 0 debt, and a substantial down payment ready to go. That down payment was my safety net, a small but significant inheritance my grandmother had left me. I remember her funeral vividly. She pulled me aside a few months before she passed and told me, "Clara, never let a man be your financial plan." I thought I was honoring her by using that money to build a future with the man I loved. Mr. Henderson looked at us over the top of his glasses, his expression a mixture of pity and pragmatism. "Look," he said, directing his words to me. "The smart move here, the only move, is for her to buy the house in her name only. He can live there, pay his share as a contribution, and in a few years, when his credit is fixed and he's gotten that promotion he's talking about, you can refinance and add him to the deed." It sounded so logical. So practical. A temporary solution. Liam squeezed my hand under the table, his eyes wide with what I mistook for gratitude and humility. "You're saving us, babe," he'd whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll make it up to you, I swear." So that's what we did. I bought the house. My name was on the mortgage. My name was on the deed. My inheritance paid the closing costs. It was my risk, my investment. Liam would dutifully transfer me money every month, an amount we vaguely called his share. But I was the one who managed the household budget in a detailed spreadsheet. I knew his share barely covered a third of the mortgage payment, and that was before property taxes, home insurance, and utilities. When the main water heater flooded the basement last winter, a $2,000 emergency repair, I was the one who paid for it. When we bought the new living room set from West Elm, he threw in a few $100s for the $3,000 sectional couch. He called it our house, but every time a bill arrived addressed solely to Clara Evans, I was reminded of the cold, hard truth. It was my house. Over the years, I'd gently, then more insistently, nudge him. "Hey," I'd say after a friend's wedding, the romance of the event making me bold, "have you checked your credit score lately? Maybe we should think about that refinancing. I'd love for this to be officially ours." But there was always an excuse, a masterful deflection. "Not yet, babe. I'm still paying off that last big loan." Or, "The market's not great right now, we'd get a terrible rate." Or the one that stung the most, "It's just a piece of paper, Clara. We're happy, aren't we? Don't rock the boat." He had all the benefits of ownership, a beautiful home, a stable life, with none of the risk or responsibility. He wasn't a partner, he was a long-term guest with benefits. The final, poisonous ingredient in this toxic stew was my younger sister, Melissa. She moved back to town about 8 months ago, all wide eyes and faint helplessness after college. She started spending a lot of time at my house. I'd come home from working late on a project to find them sharing a bottle of my good wine, laughing at some inside joke on the couch I'd paid for. I'd see his name pop up on her phone, and she'd quickly flip it over with a guilty start. Once, I came home unexpectedly in the middle of the day to grab a file. I walked in to find them in the kitchen, standing far too close. His hand was on her arm, and they were whispering. The moment they saw me, they sprang apart, laughing it off. "Oh, my God, you scared us," Melissa had chirped. Liam was just giving me advice about my car loan. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting the stress of my job make me crazy. He was just being a good, supportive, almost brother-in-law. I was so wrong. The drive home from the barbecue was thick with a silence he didn't seem to notice. He was still chuckling to himself. "Did you see Uncle Jerry's face? Classic." I just kept my eyes on the road, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. As soon as we walked through the door of my house, I turned to him before he could even kick off his shoes. "What was that, Liam?" "What was what?" he asked, feigning innocence. "It was a joke, Clara. God, you need to lighten up. Your salary might be high, but your sense of humor is in the toilet." "A joke?" My voice was dangerously calm. "You publicly humiliated me. You compared me to a farm animal. And then you brought my sister into it." "What was that about Melissa?" He had the decency to look a little flustered, finally. "It was just part of the joke. You know, an exaggeration to make it funnier." I took a step closer, invading his space. Look at me and tell me you're not sleeping with my sister. He couldn't. He broke eye contact, suddenly fascinated by a scuff mark on the hardwood floor I'd had refinished. Don't be crazy, Clara. She's your sister. That hasn't stopped people before. Look at me. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. It was a physical presence in the room. Finally, he let out a long, shuddering sigh, the sound of a man who was tired of lying. It just happened, Clara, he mumbled to the floor. We didn't mean for it to. I think I've fallen for her. I've fallen for her. The words didn't hurt me. They didn't shatter my heart. They armed me. It was the final piece of data I needed. There were no tears, no pleading, no screaming about a potential divorce from a marriage we never even had. Just a switch flipping inside my head from partner to problem. I nodded slowly, a single, decisive movement. Okay. I turned and walked into my home office, closing the door behind me with a soft click. In the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, there was a folder. A simple, unassuming manila folder labeled Household Contingency Plan. I'd started it 6 months ago, after the last time he'd brushed off a conversation about our future. It had the number for a moving company I had already vetted. It had the signed lease for a new apartment in a nicer part of town, the deposit already paid. It had a detailed checklist of every asset, every bill, every password. His joke wasn't a wake-up call. It was the starting gun for a race he didn't even know he was in. The next morning, he left for his electrician job, whistling a cheerful, off-key tune. The moment his truck was out of sight, my plan went into action. The moving company I'd put on standby arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. They were a whirlwind of efficiency, a team of 4 professionals who packed up my life with methodical speed. My furniture, my clothes, my kitchen supplies, my books, the 70-inch TV I bought for our Super Bowl parties. Everything. I stood in the middle of the chaos, a project manager in my element, directing them with a clipboard and a clear head. At 1 p.m., the locksmith arrived. He worked quickly, his tools making small, satisfying metallic sounds as he changed every single lock on the property. He handed me a new set of keys, and the weight of them in my palm felt like sovereignty. The last thing I did before leaving my house for the last time was take a picture of the empty living room. The indentations in the carpet where our couch used to be looked like ghosts. I texted the picture to Liam. My message was simple and brutal. The cow and her milk have moved out. Hope you and my sister enjoy the empty barn. I had already blocked his number on my main line, but I watched on my laptop as the iMessage delivered. Then I shut the computer, severing the final digital tie. An hour later, my secondary phone, a cheap burner I kept for this very purpose, began to ring. It was Liam. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. And again. The text started flooding in, a frantic, escalating symphony of panic. Clara, this isn't funny. Where is all our stuff? Did we get robbed? Call me now. Answer your phone. I can't get in the house. The key isn't working. What did you do? Our stuff? You can't just take everything. This is my house too. I'm calling the cops. This is illegal. Then, right on schedule, the calls from his parents started. First, Michael, his father, leaving a blustering, angry voicemail dripping with entitlement. Clara, this is Michael. I don't know what childish game you're playing, but you will let my son into his home. We will be exploring all of our legal options. Then Brenda, his mother, her voice trembling, a pathetic mix of apology and accusation. Clara, dear, it's Brenda. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Liam is so upset. I had a feeling something was wrong between you two, and with Melissa. I'm so sorry, dear, but you can't just do this. I sat on an inflatable mattress in the middle of my new, empty apartment, surrounded by boxes that represented my reclaimed life. For the first time in years, the silence was absolute. There was no TV blaring with a sports game I didn't care about, no trail of dirty socks leading to the laundry room, no feeling of waiting for someone else's life to begin before mine could. It was just quiet. And it was the most beautiful sound in the world. I let them all spin out in their collective panic. This wasn't chaos to me. It was the controlled demolition of a life I had outgrown. I pulled out the white, 1-inch binder from my work bag. My contingency plan. My armor. I spent the next hour reviewing it, my heart rate as steady as a metronome. I was a project manager, and this was the most important project of my life. The risk assessment was complete. The execution phase was underway. The next day, I dealt with the co-conspirator. I called Melissa. She answered on the second ring, her voice a sickeningly sweet chirp. Clara. Hey. I was just thinking about you. Is everything okay? Liam said you were acting weird last night. Save it, Melissa, I said, my voice flat and cold. I know about you and Liam. The silence on her end was a confession. When she finally spoke, her voice was hard, stripped of its fake sweetness. It's not what you think. We couldn't help it. We're in love. He was going to tell you. I laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound that was more like a bark. In love? Don't insult my intelligence. You're in love with the lifestyle I provided. The house, the vacations, the easy living. You saw what I had, and you decided you wanted it. You're no different from him. That's not true, she shrieked, her voice rising. You never appreciated him anyway. You were always so focused on your career and your salary and your spreadsheets. You never made him happy. My money paid for the roof over your lover's head, I said, my voice like ice. The roof he no longer has access to. I've changed the locks. Good luck building a life on a foundation of lies and betrayal. Oh, and you can tell him I've sent a formal notice to vacate to his parents' house. He has 30 days to arrange collection of his personal belongings. I hung up before she could respond, the click of the phone ending our sisterhood forever. That evening, I finally responded to the barrage of messages, but not to Liam. I sent an email from a new, sterile address I'd created for this exact purpose. The recipient was Michael, his father, who had so eagerly appointed himself the family spokesman. The subject line was, meeting regarding property at 123 Maple Street. The body was short and professional. Michael, a meeting is acceptable to discuss the removal of Liam's personal effects. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. at the Daily Grind coffee shop on the corner of Oak and Main. I will be bringing my own paperwork. I suggest you do the same. The ball was in their court. Let's see what kind of game they thought they were playing. I got to the Daily Grind 20 minutes early. It was a neutral territory, public and well-lit. I chose a table in the far corner, a strategic position where I could see the entrance and my back was to a solid wall. I ordered a large iced tea and laid my weapon on the table. It wasn't a lawyer, not yet. It was my simple, 1-inch white binder. To anyone else, it was just office supplies. To me, it was my holy grail, my declaration of independence. It was the culmination of 6 months of quiet, methodical preparation, of late nights spent scanning receipts and downloading bank statements after Liam was asleep. Organization is what I do for a living, and this was my masterpiece. I felt zero nerves. This wasn't an emotional showdown about a breakup. It was a project review, a final audit, and I was about to present my findings. They walked in exactly at 4 p.m., a little storm cloud of collective misery. Liam, Brenda, and Michael. Liam's eyes were puffy and red, he refused to look at me, focusing on the floor as if it held the secrets of the universe. Brenda looked like she'd been crying for 24 hours straight, her face pale and drawn. And Michael had his jaw set in that angry, self-important way he got when he thought he was in charge of a situation he fundamentally misunderstood. They sat down, the scrape of their chairs against the floor loud in the bustling cafe. Before I could even say hello, Michael launched his pre-rehearsed attack. "Clara," he said, leaning forward, his voice low and intimidating. He was trying to use his "I'm a business owner" voice on me. "We are here to figure out a path forward. What you've done is frankly shocking and completely unacceptable. You can't just throw a person out of their home after 7 years. There are legal ramifications. Common law marriage." Brenda jumped in, her voice trembling, twisting a napkin in her hands. "We thought you were family, dear. How could you be so cruel? He has nowhere to go. He's sleeping on our couch. His whole life is in that house." Liam, who had been staring at the table as if willing it to swallow him whole, finally looked up, his voice a low, resentful mutter. "You stole my things. All our furniture. Half of that was mine. I let them finish. I let their accusations hang in the air, swirling with the smell of burnt coffee. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my iced tea, letting the cold plastic straw touch my lips. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable for them. Then, I placed my hand flat on the white binder. The plastic cover was cool and solid under my palm. "Okay," I said, my voice bright and cheerful, a jarring contrast to their funereal tones. "I'm glad you're all here and you've brought up these points. Common law marriage, ownership, cruelty. All very interesting topics. I actually have some information that might clear things up." I opened the binder with a crisp, satisfying snap. It was beautifully organized, with neat, colored tabs, each one a nail for their coffin of lies. I brought my paperwork, just like I said I would. "Let's go through it together, shall we?" I turned to the first tab, a cool blue one labeled Property Ownership. I pulled out a heavy, notarized copy of the deed to the house and the original mortgage agreement from the bank. I slid them across the table. They were heavy with the weight of legal truth. "As you can see," I said, pointing with the tip of my pen, "my name, Clara Evans, and my name only, is on every single one of these ownership documents. I am the sole legal owner of the property at 123 Maple Street. The state we live in does not recognize common law marriage unless you publicly present as husband and wife, which we never did." Point 1, dismissed. Michael glanced at them, his face tightening, and waved a dismissive hand. "That's just a technicality, a financing arrangement." "Ah," I cut him off, my smile never wavering. "A legal technicality, you mean? Let's move on to tab 2, then." I flipped to a green tab, the color of money. "Let's call this one the down payment." I pulled out a bank statement from 4 years ago, a clear, undeniable record of the wire transfer from my inheritance account directly to the escrow company for the full, 6-figure down payment. That was my money, from my grandmother. Not our money. Mine. Liam started to say something, a weak protest, but I was already on a roll, turning to a bright yellow tab. Which brings me to my favorite section. Tab 3, Monthly Contributions. I pulled out the spreadsheet. It was a thing of beauty, a testament to my project management skills, with formulas and color coding. It had columns for every single month for the past 4 years. "So, Liam," I said, looking right at him for the first time, my eyes locking with his and holding him there. "You claimed you paid for half of everything. A bold claim. But let's look at the numbers, shall we? Numbers don't lie." My finger traced the first column. "This column is the amount you transferred to my bank account every month. Very consistent, I'll give you that." I moved to the next. "This second column is the actual total of the mortgage payment, the property taxes, the home insurance, and all the utilities, gas, electric, water, internet, for that same month. All paid from my account, as these corresponding statements show. I paused, letting them look at the sea of figures. I watched their eyes track the numbers. I saw Michael's face get tighter and tighter, his self-righteous anger deflating like a cheap balloon. And this third column, I said, tapping it with my fingernail, making a sharp little clicking sound, this third column shows the difference. It shows, in black and white, how much more I paid than you did, every single month. On average, I continued, my voice as clear as a bell in the noisy cafe, your share covered about 35% of the basic cost of running the house. That's before we even factor in maintenance, like the new water heater I paid for, or any of the furniture you claim is half yours. Which, by the way. I flipped to another tab, this one orange, labeled assets, and pulled out a stack of receipts. The couch, the TV, the dining set, the bed, all paid for by me. I leaned back, letting the weight of the evidence settle. So, you see, you weren't my partner building equity in a home. You were my tenant. And to be honest, you were getting a fantastic deal on rent. Brenda looked like she was going to faint. Liam just stared at the spreadsheet, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. And just in case there was any confusion about the other arrangement, I said, my voice dropping, becoming more intimate, more dangerous. I flipped to a final, blood-red tab labeled Personal Correspondence. I slid a few printed pages across the table. They were screenshots. Texts between Liam and Melissa, sent to me by a mutual friend who thought I should know. Explicit, loving, full of secret plans and cruel jokes at my expense. The dates on them went back 6 months. This wasn't a recent mistake. It was a long-term campaign of betrayal. I closed the binder with a final, satisfying snap. And lastly, I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out one last document, folded neatly. This is a summary of the legal advice I received from a reputable lawyer 6 months ago. It confirms that a long-term guest with no lease agreement, who does not contribute equally to the household equity, can be asked to vacate the premises with a 30-day written notice, which, as you know, I have already provided via email. I leaned back in my chair, my work done. I took another sip of my iced tea. So, are there any other questions about the house? Or your son's character? The table was silent. The bustling noise of the coffee shop seemed to fade into a dull roar. Liam was just shaking his head, mumbling, I can't believe this. I can't believe you did this. Then, I decided it was time for the final presentation. My voice turned sweet as sugar, dripping with mock sympathy. You know, Liam, this all comes back to that joke you made. The one you were so proud of, about not buying the cow when you get the milk for free. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. His parents looked utterly confused. You thought you were so clever, I said, my voice dropping a little, becoming more intense. But the thing you completely failed to understand, the critical piece of data you missed, is that the cow owned the whole farm. The barn you were sleeping in, the pasture you were relaxing in, the goddamn water trough you were drinking from, all of it. And you weren't getting the milk for free. I was just giving you a family discount because I thought you were my partner. I thought we were building a life together. But at that barbecue, you and your whole family made it very, very clear that I was just some convenient appliance. A cow. I stood up, the movement fluid and final. So, the discount has been discontinued. The farm is closed for business. And you are no longer welcome on the property. That's when Liam finally exploded, slamming his fist on the table. This is insane. You planned this. You were plotting against me. I gathered my things, sliding the victorious white binder into my bag. It felt heavy with the weight of justice. No, Liam, I said, looking down at him, at this small, pathetic man. I wasn't plotting. I was preparing. It's called being a responsible adult. It's the kind of thing people do when they actually own things instead of just freeloading off their girlfriend for 7 years. You have 29 days to get your stuff. Coordinate through the email I provided. I looked at Brenda and Michael, whose faces were masks of shock and dawning, horrified realization. Thank you for this meeting. It's been very productive. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. Before the glass door had even swung shut behind me, I could hear them starting to argue, their angry, bewildered voices chasing me out into the clean, free air. I got in my car, and I didn't feel angry or sad. I just felt light. The project was reviewed, the findings were presented, and the case was officially, irrevocably closed. The month that followed was tense, but it was a tension I was in complete control of. Liam did, in fact, coordinate via email, his messages curt and sullen. He scheduled a time to come and get his things. I wasn't about to be there alone, so I had my best friend, Sarah, come over. We put on a playlist of empowering breakup anthems, ordered a large pizza with extra pepperoni, and waited. Liam showed up with his dad, Michael. They didn't bring a moving truck, just Michael's dented pickup, which I found deeply, wonderfully pathetic. They were both sullen and silent. Liam went from room to room, grabbing his clothes, his video games, his sad little collection of belongings, and throwing them into black trash bags. Not even boxes. Trash bags. The only dramatic moment came when he tried to pick up the expensive Breville espresso machine from the kitchen counter. I'm taking this, he grunted. I just cleared my throat. Oh, that's staying here. He turned, his face a thundercloud. What? I use this every day. I bought it for us for Christmas. I had my phone ready. I pulled up the Amazon receipt from 2 years ago. Really? Because this receipt says I bought it on my Prime account, paid for with my credit card, on November 28th. You can take the cheap Mr. Coffee drip machine that's in the pantry. I think you contributed $20 for that one. Michael shot him a look that screamed, "Don't start, you'll only make it worse," and Liam slammed the espresso machine back on the counter with a loud crack and stomped out. It was a small, petty moment, but it felt so good to stand there, armed with indisputable facts, while he had nothing but his own blustering entitlement. They loaded up the truck with his few bags of shame and left without another word. A week later, a scary-looking letter arrived in my new mailbox. It was on thick, creamy paper, from a fancy-looking law firm. It was written on behalf of Michael Hartman, claiming that Liam had a claim to a portion of the property's value due to his significant financial contributions and emotional investment. For a second, a cold spike of fear went through me. What if I was wrong? What if they could drag me into a long, expensive legal battle? Then I remembered I had my own lawyer. I took a picture of the letter and forwarded it to her, my heart pounding. She called me back an hour later, and I could hear the laughter in her voice. "Oh, honey, this is what we call a saber-rattling letter," she said, her voice full of amused confidence. "It has absolutely no legal merit. It's designed to scare you into a settlement. It's a bluff, and not a very good one. Don't worry. I'll handle it." She sent back a response so sharp, so legally devastating, citing precedent and threatening them with sanctions for filing a frivolous claim, that I never heard from them again. The silence was deafening. It was the best money I ever spent. After the 30-day notice period was officially up, I called a realtor. We put the house on the market, and in the crazy housing market, it sold in less than a week for way more than I was expecting. I went to the closing alone. I sat at a long, polished table and signed my name over and over again. When it was done, the title agent slid a check across the table to me. Seeing that number, that life-changing number, hit my bank account a few days later was a feeling I can't even describe. It was the physical proof of my freedom. It was the value of the farm the cow had built all by herself. It's been 8 months since that day. So, what have I been doing? Well, for the first month, I did absolutely nothing. I slept in. I read books I'd been meaning to read for years. I went on long walks with no destination. I just enjoyed the peace and quiet of my new apartment. Then, I booked a trip. I spent 3 glorious weeks traveling through Italy by myself, something I'd always wanted to do but could never afford because all my money was tied up in our future. I ate pasta in Rome, drank wine in Tuscany, and hiked between the villages of the Cinque Terre. I ate so much gelato I'm pretty sure my blood type is now marinara. I felt my soul expanding. I got back 2 months ago and I'm just enjoying my life. I haven't even bought a new house yet. I'm renting a beautiful apartment with a view of the city and investing the money from the sale, letting it grow for me, under the guidance of a financial advisor who speaks to me like an intelligent adult. For the first time, my future feels like a wide-open road instead of a narrow, dead-end track leading to someone else's destination. As for Liam, I don't hear much, but I get little bits of information from mutual friends, like sad little postcards from a shipwreck. He and Melissa moved into a tiny, run-down apartment together, but their great, epic love quickly crumbled under the weight of real-life responsibilities and bills. Apparently, she was shocked that he couldn't provide the lifestyle I had so effortlessly supplied. A friend told me she saw them having a screaming match in the parking lot of a Walmart over the price of groceries. They broke up after 3 months. She's already with someone else, some older guy with a boat. Liam is now 31 years old and living in his parents' basement. He's apparently super bitter, telling anyone who will listen that I'm a crazy, manipulative person who stole everything from him. The family that laughed along with his joke about the free milk? Well, now they get to enjoy the 31-year-old freeloader living under their roof, complaining that the milk in their fridge isn't organic. It seems like a fitting, poetic end for them all. The other day, I was thinking about his stupid joke. Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free? It's such a gross, outdated saying, designed to diminish women to a commodity. But in a way, he was right to ask the question. He just had it all backward. The real question isn't about buying the cow. The real question is, why would the cow give away her milk for free when she owns the entire farm and could be making delicious, expensive, artisanal cheese instead? I'm done giving away free milk. From now on, I'm focusing on my own pasture. And let me tell you, the view from here is pretty amazing. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who feels undervalued or taken for granted. Have you ever had a single moment, a single sentence, that made everything in your life crystal clear? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps more than you know.